At Fixology Repair, we are committed to restoring your pieces so that everything works or fits the way it ought to. Watch servicing, chain repair, and broken screen replacements are just a few of the services that we offer at our 2 locations, Mall of America and the Skyway in downtown Minneapolis. Please visit us at fixologyrepair.com or at fixologymn on Twitter to learn more. Mention this ad and get a 10% discount on our services.
All right, let's say they don't get an offensive lineman in the first round, or they trade down, which is kind of my prediction of what's going to happen. What are their options in the second round with offensive tackles?
Yeah, with tackles, I think Dalton Reisner could be there. Greg Little could be there. Greg Little was actually a guy that a lot of people had middle of the first round early. Yadni Kajust is a possibility. Caleb McGarry is another one. I've watched most of these guys. I haven't gotten to Kajust yet, but Reisner to me has the best flexibility to either play tackle or guard. Little was a left tackle that to me looks like he is far too stiff to be a left tackle at the NFL level, but I think he could be a good power right tackle. Not sure that he's going to be able to get out, and move laterally in the zone blocking scheme that the Vikings are going to do. Kajust, I know, is a stronger guy. I'm not sure he's got great athleticism out in space. And McGarry, watching him at right tackle last year, I really don't see him being a great fit to get out and have the feet, the athleticism. He looks to me like he is just a really strong right tackle that needs to be a bit more in a power scheme that doesn't ask as much of him out, getting out, running, trying to find angles on defenders and creating seams. I think he's best when he just has the guy in front of him and is able to just anchor down and make the blocks there. So I don't think McGarry is a great fit for them. I think Reisner, if he's still there in the second round, would be a great fit. I just have my doubts whether he's going to be available there.
There is a line of conventional wisdom that you don't want to spend a first-round pick on an interior offensive lineman. Of course, anybody saw Randall McDaniel play thinks that's ridiculous, but that thought is out there. In this circumstance, would it be worth spending a first-round pick on a center or a guard?
If you get a guy that you think is absolutely going to be a Pro Bowl player like Randall McDaniel was and turned into a Hall of Fame player, then yeah, I think it's worth it. I think anytime you can get a player of that caliber where you say, all right, if we have him for 8 years and he's making 4 or 5 Pro Bowls, I don't care really what position it is. I think he's worth it as long, as on offense or defense, not a specialist, obviously. But to me, the one guy that I think has the chance to really fit exactly what they need and has the athleticism, fits their scheme, it's Garrett Bradbury. I think he's got the possibility to be that guy. Watch some tape of him and just think his athleticism fits well. I think he's got to get a little bit stronger. He can get overpowered by big nose tackles. So they would have to give him some help there. But frankly, that's a lot of centers in this league. If we've seen guys get bowled over at center if they're not getting help from their guards. So if the Vikings plan to use, if they draft Bradbury in the first round and they are, they have him at either center or guard and they're looking to pull him a lot, absolutely, I think he's worth the first round pick. Cody Ford, tackle / guard. I'm not sure that he's 100% worth the pick at 18, especially if you have those 3 tackles out there that I was talking about earlier. Then I think I would tend to go that route over Ford. But if they trade down a little bit, get an extra pick, and Bradbury and the 3 tackles are gone, then I think Cody Ford makes a lot of sense for them. The other guard that's gotten a lot of talk is Chris Lindstrom, Boston College. I have watched him too. I think he's a very good guard. I don't think he's a great fit for this offense because I think he is a powerful guy, and him getting out in space doesn't look quite as good as a guy like Bradbury, maybe even Cody Ford, or even Andre Dillard at tackle. So to me, there are a few guys in this draft that I think are very good offensive linemen, but maybe not quite as athletic as the Vikings would want in their system.
Second round, and I wouldn't be surprised if Spielman trades down to get more picks and fills more holes and get good offensive linemen in the second round instead of putting the first round price tag on them. If they end up going second round, inside options, guard and center, what do you think the options are?
Yeah, I mean, and I haven't got to watch a lot of these guys, so I don't know a whole lot about them. I just know that they're very well respected. Eric McCoy and Elton Jenkins. From everything I've read about these guys, they should be, guys that can step in, start, contribute right away. And so if the Vikings do end up going with a position other than offensive line in the first round, those are two guys that could be options and probably should still be available when the Vikings are on the clock with their second round pick at 40.
Hoaglund, Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent, my State Farm agent, Michael Russo's State Farm agent, also now providing financial services. Great guy, great person to work with, great supporter of TalkNorth.com.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
All right, and we do suspect that Mike Zimmer's in there lobbying for a good defensive tackle. If they end up taking a defensive tackle in the first round, who might it be?
Quinnen Williams is obviously going to be gone. I think Ed Oliver is also going to be gone. Ed Oliver's the guy that really reminds me of John Randall. Just, short, squatty, powerful, super explosive, choppy steps, really high effort guy. The one that I think is going to be interesting, if Oliver and Williams are both gone and Christian Wilkins, the Clemson defensive tackle, should be a three technique guy in this league. If he's there, he is an interesting prospect to me. Probably not quite as explosive as Ed Oliver, but he can still get to the quarterback. What I really liked about watching his games is the way that, he seems to have a great feel in run stopping and where it's going to go and stringing that play out down the line of scrimmage. A lot of the defensive tackles, I think the three technique guys that love to pass rush in the NFL, initially when they get into their careers, it seems like it's all about just getting upfield and getting in the quarterback's face. I think Christian Wilkins has a really good feel of when to do that and try to split double teams and when to just move laterally, keep his shoulder pads square to the line of scrimmage, and string out a run play. So that's an interesting name for me to watch because I think there's a possibility he's still there at 18. The other guy who is really, really good, and I'm going to be curious to see where he goes for two reasons. Jeffrey Simmons, if he didn't have two strikes against him, number one, while he was preparing for the draft, he blew his ACL out. So he is likely not going to be ready for the 2019 season. And then he has a off the field, I think it was a battery incident where, that the off the field character issues are something that the Vikings have to be concerned about. They brought him in for a visit, so it's going to depend on how comfortable they are with that. The fact that he can't play this year because of the ACL makes me think that it's probably not an option that they would consider at 18. I just don't think they're in a position where they can wait for a guy for a year before he's available to them. But if he's there in the second round, I think he's definitely worth the pick. Or if the Vikings end up either trading down late into the first round or trading up in the second round, then maybe you do make that choice. I just think it's a risk they can't afford to take at number 18 because of the ACL and because of the character issues.
Let's skim through some Vikings draft history because it is pretty fascinating. You did a lot of research on this. Looking at your research, Vikings draft history, they've spent 10 first-round draft picks on running backs. I never would have thought that was the case, especially for a team that ended up trading for Herschel Walker. And obviously, the Adrian Peterson pick was well worth it. I'm not sure there are many others that would have been worth it. And the only position they've spent more first-round draft picks on is defensive line, which makes sense because it's a position of need, and they've also had great success drafting those guys. But running back, 10 running backs and 7 wide receivers in the first round, and a lot of them were busts, and then 4 first-round picks on quarterbacks, one of which was Christian Ponder.
Right. Yeah, it is really interesting to and I think fans of every team feel like, we've had so many busts with this position or that position. And I think when you start looking around the league, you realize what a crapshoot the draft really is. I mean, if you have 8 picks like the Vikings do, I think your hope is you get 3 starters out of that, and maybe one of those guys is a multiple-time Pro Bowler. It's so hard, and everybody thinks that the Patriots are this gold standard of drafting. I think the Patriots are kind of the gold standard of personnel maneuvering, but not necessarily drafting. I mean, they've had their share of busts as well. Yeah, to me, one of the really interesting things, putting all the draft history, especially the first 3 rounds, into context with where the Vikings are now and their needs. Like you said, defensive line. They've taken 17 defensive linemen with first-round picks, and they've had some busts there too. I mean, Derek Alexander was not a great defensive end for them. Erasmus James was a complete bust for them. So you can have busts on the offensive line or defensive line, but the fact that they've taken 18 defensive linemen and only 8 offensive linemen, they've more than doubled up the number of defensive linemen that they've taken. So is that an indication? I don't know, maybe, except for the fact that they probably haven't been as desperate for offensive linemen in the past as they are this year.
Right. They've had very good deep offensive lines throughout their history. This happens to be an aberration. And second round, they spent 9 picks on wide receivers, 9 picks on offensive linemen, 13 on defensive backs, and 3 on tight ends, where they've never taken a first-round tight end. So if history holds here, it wouldn't be surprising to see him trade down, get an offensive line, but maybe also get a tight end or a defensive back.
Yeah, I mean, defensive back, I still think people would be a little irritated. Fans would be irritated if they took a cornerback in the second round after, you've got Mackenzie Alexander, Trey Waynes, Xavier Rhodes, all these guys that are first and second round picks. But to me, it was interesting that while the first round was so dominated by defensive line, in the second round, they've actually taken more offensive linemen than defensive linemen. So I think you kind of find that value to the team, where a defensive lineman, I think, is generally going to be a little bit more valued by most teams than an offensive lineman. In the second round, all of a sudden you start to see value, and we can get a quality starter here who can start for 8 years, may not be a multiple-time Pro Bowler, but should be a really quality pick in the second round. So that's why I might be a little more open to the Vikings not taking an offensive lineman in the first round and waiting until the second or third round to fill that final spot that's needed.
Right, which is another reason why I could really see them trading down, getting multiple picks and filling a lot of holes instead of just trying to get one outstanding player. Highest, you also did some research, the highest the Vikings have taken players by position, and obviously quarterback Dante Culpepper at 11th pick in the first round is the highest they've ever taken. Some other interesting ones, Troy Williamson at 7th, complete bust. Randall McDaniel, guard at 19th, one of the greatest players in NFL history. Ranieri, offensive tackle, taken first in the first round, great player. Dave Huffman, my old friend, was drafted as a center and ended up playing some guard and bouncing around, was taken 49th. Carl Eller, 6th. Chris Dolman, counting as a linebacker, because he's a college linebacker, 4th. Trey Waynes, cornerback 11th.
Yeah, and